Buon pomeriggio, benvenuti a tutti.
Good afternoon and welcome everybody. I hope this dimmed light doesn't make you fall asleep, also because you will miss something extraordinary. Well, the title is a bit strange. Experiences being tested or under test. It's not an arbitrary general title, though, because these meetings, and this is the first one, have been thought of to give people the opportunity to go deeper into certain topics, like, for example, what happened in the life or to the life of a great person in the encounter with the experience which has generated and still supports the meeting, the charism of Father Giussani and the Communion and Liberation Movement. We have invited here to this meeting one of the most important and promising figures in theology and in the experience of the Church of England, Andrew Davison, who at the present time is Professor of Doctrine at the Westcott House in Cambridge. He had the same chair at St. Stephen's House in Oxford and was also chaplain at Merton College. At Merton College, he taught chemistry. He specialized in biochemistry. At the present time, he's working at a research doctorate in Cambridge on the theological conceptions of finitude. With Alison Milbank, who is also here at the meeting, he is the author of an important work for the parish, A Critique of Fresh Expressions. He was the curator of a new book of prayers. Both books were published in 2010. He held conferences of apologetics and promoted a summer school for 3 years in Oxford on these topics. And he's also the coordinator of conferences on the topic returning to the church. We have asked him to tell us about the story of his encounter with the charism of Father Giussani. Well, we've asked him first to tell us about this, and then to make us understand how the encounter with the charism helps him in his Christian experience, in his being Anglican, in historical conditions like the current ones for the Church of England that are not certainly easy ones. The encounter will be a multimedia encounter because he wanted to show us certain slides introducing us to the encounter with the movement. The floor to you, please.
Thank you for your kind invitation and for your kind introduction. The first time I read Father Giussani's name, it was attached to a short quotation from The Risk of Education. It was striking. His idea was not necessarily new to me, but I had never heard it expressed with such force and clarity. Giussani urged us not to exalt ideas over practices, ideas alone will not withstand attacks upon our faith. Christian ideas must be rooted in Christian practices that form Christian habits. It is doctrine made physical and communal that makes faith stable. I was writing a paper on this theme at the time. As I read Father Giussani in The Risk of Education, I knew straight away that I had discovered someone important. And the point he made there underlines everything I have subsequently come to know about the movement. Divine Providence likes to use a fairly bright highlighter pen on occasions. As if to confirm that I should investigate CL, Father Giussani was soon mentioned to me by two different theologian friends. Then a colleague of mine in nuclear physics asked me if I would give a room to a friend of his for a few weeks. The friend turned out to be a member of CL, and so I went with him to my first school of community. And I could say that my involvement with CL then really began, since it was from here that friendships began. At a conference in Rome on themes raised by Pope Benedict's Regensburg address, I met Alessandra Gerolin and Pia de Simone, now famous for recently cooking for the Archbishop of Canterbury in grand communion and liberation style. In all honesty, they should be at this table too, giving this talk with me. And with them Samuele and Davide and Guadalupe and Luca and João and Beppe and Eleanor. Friends I met soon after, at a conference in Nottingham on money and Catholic social teaching, or at the meeting 2 years ago, or in Oxford or Madrid. Soon, I was making sure that any conference I organized had CL involvement. And soon these friends were coming to see me a few times each year so that we could read and reflect upon a book together. We worked our way through the first volume of How Is It Possible to Live This Way on Faith. Later this year, we might turn to something from the Church of England, perhaps T.S. Eliot's idea of a Christian society. So because friendship is at the heart of this, I wanted to show you some photographs. If we could have the first set. Here we are. So, there we are in an Italian restaurant across the road from where I lived. And the next one. And this is a Christmas dinner in my seminary, where you'll see the English tradition of wearing a crown in honor of the three kings. And the next one. And there, the women of CL making sure that I eat properly. And the next one. And the next one. So there's Pia practicing for the Archbishop of Canterbury. And my books take over every room of the house, so that's the dining room. And the next one, that's probably about it. And here we are, I think, touring Oxford. And another one. And that's the River Thames, rather a good photograph. And finally, I was about to move from Oxford to Cambridge, and I'm sure that I wouldn't have managed the move except that my CL friends packed my library for me. And a few of them even helped me arrange my books in alphabetical order at the other end. So, I wanted to say something about first impressions. There's such a lot to say on that score, but I'll stick initially to two, and the relation between them, which is important. The people of the movement are full of zeal, and they are also full of joy. Zeal and joy. Zeal, then. So, you are a wonderful witness against apathy. The great American Catholic activist, Dorothy Day, challenged us to live as if the truth were true. And this is also Father Giussani's challenge. In the Church there is a sickness, a malaise, we say in English, which is a sickness that is a weariness. Anyway, there is this malaise in my church and maybe also in yours, a tiredness. People assent to the Christian faith, they believe the Christian faith, although they may not know it well. They go to church, although not every Sunday, and not for very many feast days. But all in all, it doesn't make a great deal of difference. Christianity is one conviction among many, and it's one activity among many. Well, didn't Father Giussani say to you that the Christian faith either determines everything or it is nothing? The practice of our faith cannot be one more activity among many, but rather that around which everything else turns. The Creed expresses not just one set of ideas among many, but ideas around which everything else turns. We could say the Christian faith is either something for which one could be a martyr, or we have not grasped it. Father Giussani's charism for the 20th century was to say that we can't sleepwalk, somnambulare, I think you say, through life. We cannot sleepwalk through life, only weakly attached, only weakly Christian. And he had such confidence in the faith that he could say, work out if it's true. And that, of course, is a risk, for if it is a real invitation, then you must leave both options open, that it is true or that it is not true. It's a high-risk strategy, but I suppose he saw that lukewarm Christianity is an even greater risk. So that's zeal. And my other observation is about joy. You are serious about your faith, but you are not necessarily serious in the other sense of the word serious in English. You are not necessarily grave or solemn, and that is something to notice. That, in fact, is something to celebrate. Among people who take their faith seriously, faith can all too easily become rather grim or dour, a little sad, a little dispiriting to others. CL people are serious but not grave or solemn, grim, dour or dispiriting. In CL you are marked by your joyfulness. You walk with a skip in your step. And of course, you sing. At the heart of this is communality. As the psalm says, how good and pleasant it is for brethren to live together in unity. The Christian is called upon, we could say, to sing both Miserere and Alleluia. And you rightly sing both, but the Alleluia rightly wins out. Also important is your sense of adventure, and singing comes naturally to those who are on an adventure, a journey. Another way to put this is to say that CL is a movement concerned with maxima and not minima. As I see it, Father Giussani urged his friends on to goodness, not by restriction, but by an expansion of the heart and of the Christian vision. he was not concerned so much to police behavior as he was to propose something good, something attractive. He would not have you strangle desire, but rather educate it and have it expand towards its truest object, which is God himself. This was illustrated beautifully for me on my first meeting with a woman of the movement here in the meeting who has subsequently become a good friend. In her teenage years, she had begun to take God seriously, and the church and sin and redemption seriously. And she joined one of the more famous and famously conservative Roman Catholic movements. For a while, it helped her on her Christian journey. But after a period of time, it seemed joyless, fundamentally cautious, and distrustful of life. The Christian life was a series of disciplines to hold off sin before death came to make us safe. When she encountered the legacy of Father Giussani, she saw that there was something unworthy of this, unworthy of the Christian faith. As she said to me, she learned from Father Giussani that the path to God does not consist in making our desire smaller, but indeed our desire cannot be too great because its truest object is God. And she is the most wonderful advertisement for the movement and for the Christian faith because of this. So I come from the Church of England, and maybe I should say something about my experience of the movement in relation to ecumenism. So ecumenism only flourishes today when it flourishes as friendship. It does not so much today progress as a formal relationship between bishops, but as friendship between bishops. Not as formal relationships between churches at the moment, but as friendships between ordinary Christians. That's why CL, which is so much built on friendship, can achieve so much for the unity of the Church. Your particular charism is a great gift for ecumenism, and that's because of your distinctive emphasis on both experience and the truth of the Christian faith. You combine subjectivity and objectivity. And I can't say that I have fully understood this combination. It fascinates and impresses me. So you are concerned with experience, with what it means for this particular person to encounter God here and now. I would say that this undergirds your willingness to speak to Christians of other confessions and indeed to people beyond the Christian fold, as the meeting in Cairo recently shows. It's what allows you to have a meeting for friendship between peoples. And you might call it curiosity, but I think it deserves a more dignified name. It's a sort of wonder. You rejoice at the Spirit's work wherever it is found. So I must admit that your talk of experience worried me when I first encountered it. In my late teens, I had left the Church of England and joined an independent Pentecostal church. In that church, experience was central, but it became increasingly problematic for me theologically. It was individual experience. It was often unrational, even incommunicable. So when I encountered CL a few years ago, it raised this question: was your emphasis on experience like that of the Pentecostals I had known? I asked that very question to a group of Spaniards in one of the tents, I think the tent of the Spanish tavern, just outside, 2 years ago. They said, no, we mean experience within the bonds of community. We do not mean momentary emotional experience. This is ongoing experience, tested as we journey together as Christians. That reassured me. I had been a bit alarmed by this emphasis on experience, but now I think it's central to what you have to offer, and it's part of what makes CL ecumenical. You value the very particular experience of each person, which is not a copy of anyone else's. So my experience as a member of the Church of England, as a priest in the Church of England, and as a theologian of the Church of England, is something that seems to interest people, something to be wondered at in your wonderful, wondering way. So I have a couple more pictures. The Pope spoke of Anglican patrimony in his recent, I'm trying to think what the level of the papal, well, in the piece of writing which created the Ordinariate, he spoke of the Anglican patrimony. And so here are some pictures of CL friends exploring the Anglican patrimony. This is the wonderful Norman church in Iffley. And I think we have a picture of the inside. There we are. And a couple more. This is Ely Cathedral, built in the Fens just outside Cambridge. And here you see it's extraordinarily long, beautiful Norman nave. And here's the glory of Ely Cathedral, the octagonal lantern above the altar. Yeah. So there we are. I thought a few pictures would liven the talk. So that's the pole. I've talked to you about the pole of subjectivity. But you also have your feet firmly planted in objectivity. How can that be? It's only possible because you are confident in God and his supreme objectivity. That he is true, that he is all in all, the goal of all desires, the origin of all that is good and true. So I'm not quite sure how you manage to bring together the subjective and the objective in the way you do. I suppose you are simply true Christian Platonists. You are confident that all subjective knowledge is ultimately knowledge of something objective. And that which could seem most subjective of all, namely our experience of God, is an experience of that which is most objective, because God is the most true. Finally, on this theme, I want to turn to one more aspect of what Father Giussani taught, namely the idea of preferentia. I don't know how clearly this is defined or how important it is for you officially, but I have seen it to be important in practice. By preferentia, I mean that you keep your eyes open for the particular opportunity, the particular task, and most of all, the particular person whom God is giving to you. I use the word giving deliberately because this is precisely about receiving the world as God's gift and of being open to discern what his particular gift to you is going to be. Preferentia is a vitally important intersection of the subjective and the objective. It's subjective in that you meet the person, this person, at her most personal, and therefore, in a sense, at her most subjective. Her experience, her life, her strengths, her problems. But in this, it is precisely objective. It is attention to this person as precisely this person and no other, in all their particularity. Theologically, this has something to do with the practice of the present moment, but still more to do with Augustine's idea of the ordering of love, the ordo amoris. When one seeks to love everything in general, one may love nothing in particular. You, however, do love things and people in particular. It is an analogy in relation to people of your commitment to subsidiarity and the particularity of locality over the anonymity of the universal. This, personally, is the greatest thing I have received from CL. Particular friends for whom my particular experience matters, as theirs does to me. And that underlines the ecumenical point. Here are Roman Catholics, but they rejoice in my Anglicanism. Maybe sometimes more than I do. Let me say a little bit more about the relation to CL for me as an Anglican. Perhaps I can say something about similarities between the charism of the movement and characteristics of the Church of England. I'll point to two things. There's something about your attitude towards the world, towards politics, culture, society, which is deeply familiar to me as a member of the Church of England. In face of culture and the life of the mind, you are omnivorous. I love the confidence of Father Giussani that everything properly human is an occasion for us to experience God. As evidence, consider his frequent quotation from poetry and his love of music. The Church of England is very much a church of music and poetry. I love the way Father Giussani quotes so-called secular poetry just as much as religious poetry, or that his Spirito Gentile series is full of concertos and symphonies, not just overtly religious works. Love poetry, he's saying, is not unreligious, is not secular, neither is a symphony secular. Italy's own great Toscanini used to deny the distinction between high and low music. He said there are only two sorts of music: bad music and good music. I think Father Giussani says something similar. It's not that there is religious music and secular music, or theological music and untheological music. There's just good music and bad music. And all good music is about love and loss and gift and grief and striving, defeat and unexpected rescue. These are theological themes. They are religious themes. All that can and should interest the person intent upon God. There is a delight in life and all that is human in Father Giussani and the movement he founded. That means all the more to me, having slipped for a while into a very mean and narrow sort of Protestantism as a teenager. It made me suspicious of everything. There was a demon under every stone, a snare in every work of art, and most of life was off limits. We lived in a Christian enclave. I remember my elderly Anglican grandmother trying to point me in a better direction, quoting the psalm and saying to me, "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof." It took me a long time to listen to her. But going to Oxford and getting involved in my college chapel, the Church of England helped save me from suffocation. When I discovered her and found her to be wise and learned and Catholic, humane and unafraid. And I find all of that in CL. The other area I'd point to is in opportunities for conversation and common undertakings in the area of politics. Those of you who know the Church of England will know that it's a political church in at least three ways. First, on the local level, since the parish priest is a central member very often of the community, and helps it to flourish in practical ways as well as religious ones. Second, on the national level, not least in the role of the bishops in the upper house of Parliament. And third, in thought and writing, with some significant works of political thought. Now, I am reluctant to say too much about politics, not least since there are several preeminent theological commentators on politics in the Sala today. I'll say this: there clearly needs to be a revival of political life in the UK. Just consider the appalling rioting of the week before last. And we would do well to follow the principles of subsidiarity so closely embraced by CL. In fact, I can't see much of another way. A revival of politics has to mean more than party politics, and democracy has to mean more than a weary trudge to the ballot box every 4 or 5 years to cast a vote that can hardly make a difference. I remember a speech given by an analytic philosopher a few years ago, not here, you'll be glad to hear. I shan't mention his name, in which he said that we had to get politics out of daily life. I thought he was about as wrong as I could imagine. Everyday life is precisely the true domain of politics. This philosopher had defined politics into disaster. Politics for him was, by definition, what happened over there. It couldn't but disintegrate into a fight for power between vested interests in rooms in London. Politics for him was something to be restrained so that we could get on with living our ordinary lives. But unless we are horribly individualist, and I fear that he might have been, our ordinary lives are precisely lives lived together and are therefore political. It struck me that the very local things that my parents do quite naturally as public-spirited people have the essence of the truly political. Helping to run the village gardening club, in my mother's case, or running the charity that looks after the playing fields in the village, in my father's case, or even the fact that he ran a company and employed people and did so benevolently. This is the beginning of the political in everyday life. And politics in London is an image of this and not the other way round. I go through life telling people, Anglicans especially, to read Catholic social doctrine. Start with Rerum Novarum, I say, and you'll be hooked. CL models that tradition. Almost everything that I see as promising in contemporary political debate and action in England, which is mainly to say things either red Tory or blue Labour, shares this CL vision of subsidiarity. Finally, let me say something about what the Church of England might learn from the movement. Two things, I think, though they are closely related. Friendship and a gift for evangelization. Yours is a movement almost entirely grounded in friendship. If I am able to bear witness to the charism of your movement, it's only because I can bear witness to a tapestry of friendships which has happily extended to take me in. No one can really know CL as a living reality without knowing it through friendship. You do not primarily ask anyone to share your ideas. You invite all and sundry to share your common life, if they will. I have observed this, and it has underlined for me that this must be the right way to understand the mission of the Church. We make no invitation for those outside the Church simply or only to share certain new Christian ideas. And I love ideas. We invite people to share the common life of the Church. If what we believe is truly the Christian faith, then it should probably be impossible to understand outside the community of the Church. Redemption, resurrection, Christian hope, these have to be experienced in the life of the Church before they can be believed. There is an ancient hymn from the office of Terce, attributed to your beloved Ambrose of Milan, which is sung around lunchtime. One verse goes, "In will and deed, by heart and tongue, with all our powers thy praise be sung, and love light up our mortal frame, till others catch the living flame." Translated, by the way, by John Henry Newman. This verse, whenever I sing it, always makes me think of the movement, because of its language of love and fire, and of the fire of love passed from one person to another. Time and time again, I've come across people who have been converted to the faith by their contact with CL. Most often in Europe, that means reconversion to a faith they have either lost or ever only marginally possessed. Your ability to call and recall people to the faith and to the Church comes from the combination of many of the things I have already mentioned, but especially of two. First, from the real and risky offer to taste and see. To quote a psalm again, rooted in your confidence in God. So the real and risky offer to taste and see. And second, that this is an invitation to a community. And the two sides work because they work together. You can invite someone to take faith seriously because you are going to take them seriously. This is not the risk of transformation and upheaval without friendship, but neither is it an invitation to friendship without God and common purpose. So if we turn back to Ambrose, we can pray, in will and deed, by heart and tongue, with all our powers, thy praise be sung, and love light up our mortal frame, till others catch the living flame. Thank you.
This encounter with Father Andrew has reminded me and here we have the person that helped Father Giussani write this book together with me. We were forced to put our names on it, mine and Javier Prades' name, but everyone knows who the author is. Anyway, what you said reminded me that talking about ecumenism, once Father Giussani observed, what God donated to me, the charism, whereby all life, all intelligence, all passion and joy to live were possible, as was echoed in your presentation, well, all comes from the passion for the presence of Christ, the contemporary Christ. Christ that is present now, not alongside our lives, but as the root and the flourishing of all and any beauty, of all and any passion and desire. You will see that you will encounter many friends with different backgrounds, different confessions, and yet your friendship will be based on this passion for Christ being here with us. Today, we appreciate the beauty of Father Andrew's testimony. I hope you have grasped the profoundness of his intelligence and the wisdom of his reasoning, and also the profound humanity of his willingness to live, of his love for living, without removing the differences, without hiding open wounds. It is true that those who share the fire of this passion for Christ in the world can walk together in the ways and in the time that God wants, but in the real experience that every day the existence becomes an immense certainty. We're grateful, we're really grateful to you, Father Andrew, and interpreting everybody's thought. I am really inviting you to find the time, and we know that you have so many things to do, but we invite you to always find the time to come back to Rimini, to communicate something to us which is certainly of great importance and usefulness to the life of us all. Thank you very much again, Father Andrew.